Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar with a very special guest, Chris Lambeth, who we'll introduce in a second. Today we're going to be talking about wedding workflow and some adjustment with Chris as well. If this is your first webinar and you don't know who you're listening to, my name's David. I'm the guy at the top. I'm part of the software sales team based out of Copenhagen in Denmark. And we should have Chris with us as well. Are you there, Chris?
I am here.
Hey, Chris. Good, good. Through the magic of the internet, Chris is over in Phoenix, Arizona, and is a portrait, fashion, beauty, and wedding photographer over there as well. What we hope to do today is spend 60 minutes with you all, and Chris will just basically show us what he does in Capture One with the wedding process, basically. I think you'll find it all very simple and straightforward. You're very welcome and encouraged to ask questions throughout. The way you do that is at the bottom of your GoToWebinar control panel. If you're on your Mac or PC, you'll see the last section is called questions. Just put a question in there that will come through to me, and I'll just feed those through to Chris. Don't be disappointed if your specific individual question doesn't get asked. There is quite a lot of you, so it will just be a case of picking the most popular ones. We're recording this too, so if you want to watch again, it will be up on YouTube probably tomorrow sometime, and you'll get a link in the follow-up email which tells you how to get there. So that was the long intro. Sorry about that, Chris. I didn't give you much floor space.
That's fine. That's fine.
So what I'll do is I will attempt to give the screen over to Chris, which is always a more complicated process than possible, but
There we go.
there we go. Right first time. So
All right. Should be up.
yep, it's coming up. So just before we start, Chris, as I said, your primary business is fashion, portrait,
Yes.
beauty and commercial work, and also some wedding work as well, correct?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I do weddings to fill in the gaps.
Yeah. I'm sure. But you just said you've had an incredibly busy period, so
Yes.
yeah. So that's definitely a good thing.
That it is.
And so what I hoped to do today is basically a couple of things. So sort of away from the adjustment side. Traditionally, sort of Capture One has been maybe not the mainstay of the wedding photographer. People generally tend to think about using Lightroom for weddings for various other reasons. And what we want to show really is that it's just as simple to use Capture One for a wedding as it is as Lightroom, and also just as fast as well, which I think is
Much faster, actually.
yeah, faster. There we go.
Yeah.
Even better. And why do you say that? What sort of pulled you towards Capture One in the first place?
One, it's industry standard, so being able to work with it. Because I use it obviously for all my fashion, everything else, and I've had clients I've had people book me based off that I use Capture One. So
Right.
just because it looks more professional to clients. Granted, Lightroom does a great job with what it does, but Capture One just everything's just so much quicker. It just looks, to me, it personally looks better, looks more professional. The tethering on it, obviously you're not going to tether for weddings, but
No.
you could. That'd just be a pain. But yeah, no, the tethering in studio, even on location, it's great. You have the whole, you can share it to iPads, other people with computers. You don't have to be sitting at the computer to see it. You can share it all around, and the live streaming basically of tethering.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of the biggest thing that brought me to it. And then I was using Lightroom as well in conjunction with this for when I was doing weddings. And so I was like, oh, might as well try doing it all in Capture One. And I got through a wedding faster than I ever had before. So it's like, well,
Great.
Lightroom's out. So
Okay, so when sorry, carry on, Chris.
I was just gonna say, the big thing that a lot of people say too is like just the image quality that comes out of Capture One is so much better than
Hmm.
Lightroom, and like colors and just the control you have over colors and all that kind of stuff is just so much better, and so you get better images quicker. So
And did you find yourself doing less adjustment as such then to the images
yes,
to get to the end
yeah,
result? Yeah,
much less. Yeah, I mean, like as you guys will see today, it's like it's the most simple workflow or like adjustments you'll ever probably see.
great.
So
So when you first come back from a wedding, obviously you've got a bunch of images. So is there any sort of secrets you can spill on your rating slash culling process? Because that often seems to be the biggest
yeah,
hurdle of wedding photography.
um, yeah. For me, I could like I obviously have all my weddings imported already,
Yeah.
um, but let me just pull one up real quick. Let me grab. Let's grab this one. Um, so usually what I do, I've always done it this way. Like drag all my images off the card into a folder. I don't use the import through Capture One.
Hmm.
Um, for me, like for some reason, the import, I mean, you're going directly to folder rather than going through a program. So import is a little bit faster, just going directly to folder.
Correct.
And then that way you can run through it, loads into Capture One faster directly from the hard drive than going through a card and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so when I load them in, I mean, obviously they just come in full. You got all the everything that comes in like you would in Lightroom.
Yeah.
Um, but so what I do is the way I shoot my weddings, like don't mind this picture, it looks terrible. Just for some reason it's on there. Um, so basically what I do is like I shoot everything at a certain color temperature and kind of whatever like the base color temperature looks best for like that whole area. And then going through like culling, I basically I'll just run through, find every. I don't know why I mentioned that first part. Sorry, I'm really tired. I'm like all over the place. But
No.
um, so basically what I do is I'll import all the images and then um, I'll just start going through them, and as I'm going through them, you have obviously the starring hotkeys for like 1 through 5 stars. And I just use the 1 through 5 on my keyboard to do that, so it's super quick, easy. Um, and like I just go through, find the ones that I like, star them, and then usually go up to rating up here and set it to that as I'm going through them. So that way, once I mark it, it jumps to the top, and then I don't see it again until I'm going back through them, looking like when it's I actually go back through and editing, if that makes sense.
Oh, so so where you're indicating at the top right of your screen, sorting by rating,
Right.
and so you're using what, 5 stars as a pick? Is that
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
technique?
Five stars is I don't do like 4 stars, 3 stars, anything like that. I just it's either 0 or 5.
So it's in
Uh,
or out? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's in or out. It's not. There's no maybes. Like if I go through them again and I'm like, oh, maybe I don't like that shot, then I'll just completely take it out. I don't even like sit there and be like, oh, I might edit this. It's gone.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but to kind of show that thing, so I'll just start here randomly set this. So it's set on rating right now. I'm assuming you guys can see that right
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So it's
Okay.
top far right hand of the
Yep.
screen. Just
Yeah. These
just
little
show it on.
two. Yep, these little
That's right.
two arrows, rating, and you have like all these things that you can sort by. But yeah, so I have mine set to rating. So say I'm like going through this and I want that shot. I'll mark it as 5, press 5 on my keyboard, marks it, and then as soon as I hit next, that file
Yep.
jumps to the top, and I don't have to see it again until I go back through.
Gotcha.
Um, that way I'm not like going back over extra images if I have to go back through them or whatever. So just kind of it basically clears up the feed as you're going through it. So it makes it really easy. I don't know if Lightroom does that. I think Lightroom's all just it's all in order and
Good question, but that, what you've just said there, that's a really simple good tip because
yeah,
it, shooting that image straight to the top of the set is great because then you're not distracted by it once you're going through the culling
exactly.
process.
Yeah.
Uh, John just asked, this is a good question to throw in now. You're culling what, 3,000 images? I see. Is that from the
This
whole
yeah
wedding?
Yeah, this wedding's 3,200 images. So, and I've done up to, oh God, I had one wedding. I had a second shooter. We had 6,000 at the end of the wedding.
Ouch. And
So,
what do you typically reduce down to?
on average, I deliver anywhere between 7 to 800. So,
Okay, so good.
and I mean, most shots are it's like either duplicates or I mean, stuff are people are moving, so it's like out of focus or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of just like botched shots that you can get rid of, and they don't need 1,000 like reception pictures. So there's only so much dancing you can see. So,
Yeah. Very true.
but yeah, I mean, as far as like the culling goes, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's super quick, and then once, I mean, obviously you just do that throughout the entire wedding, find the ones you want, and then you scroll to the top, and then all of your um, starred images are all up at the top, and then you can just sit there and go through them from there. And then this is when I would jump into how I actually like color everything or like tone it and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you want to jump into that now, or if there's any other questions about the coloring and stuff.
I think just before I mean, that's great that it's so nice and simple, and
Yeah, it's quick.
yeah, exactly, and like if you wanted to, if you wanted to have a deeper culling system, there's nothing to stop you doing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 stars, and then if you're
Exactly,
sorting like
yeah.
you're doing, then it would have 5s at the top and all the way down to 1s.
Yeah, and you can go in. You can go in. I don't use the color tag, so I'm not sure what the hotkey is for them. But you can go in and set like color tags for everything as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For me, that's just a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, so I don't do it.
Yeah.
So it's either, for me, it's either in or out. That's it.
In
So,
or out. And that's similar to what I do, but also if you've got a numerical keypad, the popular thing to have for the color tags is 7, 8, 9. So 7 for green,
okay.
8 for amber as a possible, and then 9 for red. And then if you sort by color tag, then it will sort in that order as well. So you'd see goods, maybes, and rejects as well.
Okay.
And that's super simple way of doing it, really, like so. Good question from Matthew, which I'll answer. And this is actually speed related. You're running on Windows, I see, Chris. Are you on a 4K monitor as well? Because it looks pretty high res.
I'm on 2K.
2K. So, and just if anyone wants to zoom in, they can actually zoom your on the GoToWebinar viewer. If you need to zoom in it at all, you can actually use the zoom controls in the top right hand of the screen. Should anybody want to see you a little bit larger, that's just a side note. And also, speed-wise, Matthew was asking, where is it? Does preview image size help speed up culling? Because I can see if you're browsing through images, Chris, it's pretty snappy as far as I can tell.
Yeah, and that's usually how it is. Like, because obviously as you import it, I mean, it has to generate those previews.
Yes, correct.
And since obviously these have already been imported, so previews have already been generated, all that kind of stuff. But as far as the actual the time it takes to do that, usually when I import it, maybe 5 minutes after it's imported, all the previews are generated, and then it's this fast for the rest of the wedding or the editing process. So you have that little bit of time where it's it has to go through and do that, but once it's done, and it goes through really, really fast. So.
Yeah, exactly, and I think the golden rule for that is you match the preview size to your monitor resolution. I don't know if you can jump into Capture One preferences for a second, Chris.
I can
just
do that.
point that out, because it wasn't really an issue in the past, but now that monitor resolution has gone up and some people are on, that one, like preview image size there. If your preview image is too low, your preview size is lower than your screen res, then you'll find browsing images quite slow, because Capture One will always have to look at the raw data. But if your preview image size is at least the same res as your monitor, so in your case 2K, then you'll find it really snappy, because we'll be using the preview. So sometimes, I think that was Matthew was asking, people think that they should have a really small preview size because it will be faster, but in actual fact it can be slower. So it's,
and I've actually never changed that, so it must do that automatically. So
I think the default we have is 2560. So because that
Okay.
was generally the biggest monitors around, 2, 3 years back or whatever.
True.
But
Yeah.
now 4K IMAX and 5K IMAX have popped up, and 4K
Mm.
monitors, you will need to boost that if you attach a giant monitor and have eagle eyesight as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, and it will take a bit longer to generate previews, but it's worth it because
Mhm.
then the browsing will be much faster.
Yeah.
But as I hope you've experienced, Chris, that zipping through images is pretty fast in Capture One.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah. So good.
Cool.
Okay, so that's the sort of culling side of it, really. So yeah, now we've got our rated images into Capture One.
Yep.
Next step, I guess, basic global adjustments on
Yeah.
everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm actually just going to go ahead and open up because I put the images I'm actually going to work on in a different folder, so let me go open those
Okay.
up real quick. There
Good
it
stuff.
is. So, I mean, just quick five little images from a few weddings I've done. But yeah, like I said, I shoot everything pretty much even. Usually I sit around like 5,200 to like 5,700 Kelvin while I'm shooting, just so I don't have like weird variations and makes it harder to. I mean, for me, it takes more time to go through and like correct that. So
Gotcha.
I try to stay within like that range. It's a good, at least for the light down here, and obviously it depends on where you're shooting. But for the light down here in Arizona, like 52 to 57 will give you either like a really clean kind of white light, as you see in this one, or in this shot. And then like this shot was up in Arizona, or sorry, Seattle. And yeah, I mean, it's indoors, but it's still, I mean, I guess I'm at 5,000 Kelvin on this one, but it's still, I stay in that range.
Mm.
Um, it just gives me a good base to work off of, especially while I'm shooting, looking at the back of the camera. I can tell kind of how it's going to look in the final product. Just because I've worked with that range so much that I know what it should and shouldn't look like in camera. So, um, but yeah, so I mean, as far as like global adjustments go, obviously try to shoot them in like as good as you can in camera.
Gotcha.
Saves a lot of time. But I mean, really, like I'll go through and then so okay to give you like for global stuff, I'll go through and the way I actually edit the weddings, I edit them by section and
So
so
you
I'll
mean
have
by reception, getting ready, wedding
correct, yeah.
itself? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll go. I mean, obviously, you start with the getting ready stuff, and then move on through there. So what I'll do is I'll go through, kind of find the first. Um, we'll pretend that this is a getting ready shot, and then these are the rest of the same getting ready shots. So basically, what I'll do is I'll go through and like if I need to correct the white balance or something like this. So for this is a little bit cool for me, so I want it a little bit warmer, since most of my stuff tends to lean on the warmer side. So I'll usually just warm it up a little bit, and then once I have that, like, I mean, really, I just basically do. I run through it in steps. So I'll go through, do white balance, make sure that looks good on everything, and then exposure stuff. You kind of have to go through and change exposure per image because sometimes there's some like weird variations.
Hmm.
But for the most part, I'll go through and just kind of get the white balance set how I want it to. And since you're in the same location, it's going to be pretty much the same. You might have slight variations, but it's not like a huge issue because it's a wedding. Um,
Gotcha.
for me, I love this like the real natural. Like if it kind of looks a little bit different, that's perfectly fine. Um, and so what I'll do is you can go once you have that. The biggest thing that I've heard people say like they don't want to use Capture One for weddings is because of the batch editing,
Hmm.
which I find works really well. I just don't think people because people relate this to fashion. They don't relate it to weddings, obviously, which is why
Gotcha.
we're doing this webinar.
That's true. Yeah.
Um, so, but yeah, doing like just all the full batch editing stuff in this just works really well. Um, so, and what you can do, you can go down and do copy adjustments and then go like same thing as anything. You just copy all of them and then you can go hit apply adjustments, and it goes through. And I mean, I don't know if you guys saw how fast that was. I mean, there's only 5 images here, but it can do it. Like I can have a whole section of 500 pictures, have the settings applied within like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So it just goes. It's so fast and everything. It's amazing. So as far as like global stuff, I mean that's kind of about it. And then like I mean you have to go through like originally this shot was I'm sorry, this shot was normally dark, but I have the right white balance set for it. So I'll go through and like say, okay, this one looks good. Go to the next one, and then obviously it's dark, so you can use oh, shoot, what was it? I haven't used these for a while. Yeah, so I mean, you can just set the exposure to what you need it, and then that's pretty much. Oh, apparently, I figured out what one of the green color tag things is because I just marked that. Get rid of that. But yeah, so I'll just go through and set the exposures to how I need them, and it's really quick to run through and do that. So, but yeah, as far as like just global adjustments, that's pretty much it. So,
are you a mouse user, pen user, or shortcut key user, or combination of all three?
In Capture One, I use mouse. I don't know why. I have a Wacom tablet that I use for everything else, but for some reason in Capture One, I just tend to use the mouse.
Gotcha.
So it's faster for me. So
yeah, and as you've seen, like to bring up the various menus on the thumbnails, they're just right clicks, and that brings up all the subcontext stuff. Like
yeah, you just right click on that, and then you got anything and everything you could need on there.
Exactly. So. And if you're not a mouse fan, for anyone listening, then all of that stuff is on keyboard shortcuts too, which you can also configure to your own. So if you want to use shortcuts, everything, even adjustments, can be shortcut driven as well if you prefer that. Yeah. Yeah.
And what's cool too is so like going over the exposure stuff. So say say this one's dark, whatever. Once you like click on that and you can like you move that around, then you can use your arrow keys to like fine adjust that.
Yep.
And the problem is like I use my arrow keys to go to the next image, but so if I want to go through these like really fast, like right now I'm in the changing the exposure, I can hit control, hold down control, and then hit the right arrow. It goes to the next image, let go control, and then I can still use the arrow keys to adjust it. So I can just like run through like real quick.
Yeah, without having to pick up your mouse again.
Yeah, I was using one hand to do that right there. So going through doing that stuff's really fast. It works the same for everything. So if you want to go like change your saturation stuff like that, like you change that, then it adjusts that. Hold down control, or I guess it'd be command on Mac. Is that
command right cursor key, command left cursor key to browse through images. Yeah, and when you're in a tool itself, then yes, you can use the cursor keys to make adjustments, or use a specific shortcut key for exposure, contrast, brightness, etc., etc.
Yeah, and I don't ever use the shortcut keys for that, so I honestly don't know what it is. I don't know if you know what it is.
Not off the top of my head. It's you can always view them in the keyboard shortcut menu, or in the help. It gives you a keyboard shortcut.
You got help, keyboard shortcut summary, and then you got everything. Let's actually look that up. Which one is that? Exposure, Alt Add. That's what it is.
There you go. Yeah. So, and I don't think we don't include everything by default. So if you want to add any other adjustment, again, you can do so in the keyboard shortcut editor. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you guys heard that. It just made like this weird dinging noise. But yeah, so I mean, as far as like going through and like doing like quick global adjustments and stuff, I mean that's pretty much it. So.
A couple of questions before we move on. A few people asked, how much time do you typically spend selecting the pictures? Is it minutes, hours, weeks, etc.? Oh,
I edit a full wedding, like that wedding I had pulled up with the 3,000 images or whatever it was. I had that one edited in, I think that was 6 hours from import to export.
Okay, it's pretty good.
So yeah, it's quick. But as far as like culling, I mean, I can cull in 30 minutes.
That's good. Yep.
So I use,
Not
and obviously it helps. Like the more you do it, the faster you get. So at first I was just learning the shortcuts and that kind of stuff. But once you get that, then it's full speed ahead. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think that probably the more decisive you are, like your method of in or out,
hmm
probably saves you a bit of time as opposed to going from 1 to 5.
right, yeah. So
Yeah,
you don't have to go back through and be like, oh, do I really like the shot? No, yes, I don't know. So,
exactly,
I
exactly.
hate making decisions. So if I have to do anything more than yes or no, it's not going to go well.
Frank was asking, this probably depends if you use external flash or not.
hmm
If you do you keep the color temp the same when using external flashes or
I do,
balance for
yeah.
that differently? You do.
Yep,
So
yeah,
basically, a blanket white balance setting for
exactly.
everything you capture.
Yeah,
Yep,
and I mean, especially with weddings, I mean, you can't be sitting there taking white balance readings of every location you're going to,
gotcha.
because it's just, I mean, you shoot weddings, it's just like you gotta go fast, so you don't want to miss anything. So,
No, exactly. And a couple of people asked for if you have a second shooter, are you synchronizing the time on the cameras or doing something else if you need to match
no,
it?
usually what I'll do is I'll if I do have a second shooter almost every wedding.
Hmm.
And what I do is I make sure that their white balance is set the same, and then I go through like because when you imported them, like most I shoot on Nikon. Most of my second shooters shoot on Canon, so it's going to separate the files because of like the actual file type, the C2R or whatever Canon's is, and then you have NEF for Nikon. So it'll separate. It'll usually have mine first, and then the second shooters will come in after I go through all of mine. So I kind of edit them in two steps. If I go through, edit all of mine, and then go through and edit theirs. And there's a really easy to go through because I don't have them doing like the getting ready shots and stuff. They're doing like details and like
Right,
rings and that kind of stuff. So
candid
um,
stuff. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So if you don't
Mm.
like, I don't have to sit there and be like, oh, did I get the same shot of her putting the dress on as he did, type thing. It's just like I know I got my shots, I know he got his shots, and there's no like overlap. So it all depends on how you work with your second shooter, is how you'll edit them. So at least that's how it's been for me. So
For sure.
yeah.
Um, Good question from Harwell. Using your culling technique, you don't see an image more than once, basically, because it zips to the top of the selection.
Mhm.
Um, Harwell was asking, don't you end up accidentally getting too many images that are alike? Um, if you have, 10 similar ones of the I don't know, one particular section, do you ever have to compare multiple images side by side to see which one to pick?
Um, Not really. Like I'll go through. Depend like if it's like a really really close one. Like if I take multiple shots of like a ring in like the same
Hmm.
location, I mean I'll run back and through before those. Like if there's like six shots of like the kind of same shot of the ring, but just like maybe like a degree off, like
Yeah,
difference. I'll run through those six images before I mark one, and then find the one that I like the best, mark it, and move on. So it's just a quick run through of like those six, and then be like, okay, this one looks the best or it's the sharpest, and then mark it and go on. And that only takes like 3 or 4 seconds to do.
that's true,
So
because as you're moving through sequentially, uh, yeah, once you've picked one out of six of the same similar shot, then you're just going to move through to the next batch
exactly.
of similar images and so on. Yep, that
Yeah.
makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Gabrielle, just to be 100% sure, do you edit all your wedding pictures with only capture one? I guess that could include you. Do you dive into Photoshop afterwards, or is it
Um, depend.
99%?
It all depends. For like the bridal stuff, like the just the shots of like the bride and groom.
Hmm.
Um, Depending on like location, like if there's like if there's like cigarette butts or a trash can or something like that, I'll go into Photoshop and take them out. But for the most part, like I try to shoot so I don't have to go into Photoshop because doing that with a lot of pictures takes a long time. So for the most part, I stick strictly in Capture One. And I know Capture One has like spot removal tools and that kind of stuff. I just don't use them. I've honestly used them like once when I first started using Capture One just to see, and that was it. So just because I know Photoshop so well, so I can do it a lot faster in Photoshop. So
For sure, for sure.
and the nice part is like you can go directly from Capture One into Photoshop too. So you like say I want to take this one, I can just go right click, export or sorry process, and it'll take it right in. Like so if you have when you export, you have like all of your process recipes. You can set it to open with Photoshop, and then as soon as you hit process, it'll pop Photoshop up. So I can go with that, hit OK, and give it 2 seconds. There it is. So
And away you go.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about process recipes at the end as well, and that was nice and fast too. That's good.
yeah, it's super fast. And obviously it depends on what the specs are of your computer too. That does help.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
But either way, it's still faster than like Lightroom on this computer is slow, and it's a beefy computer. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay, so thanks for the questions so far. We'll do a few more shortly. So when it comes to kind of more edits, we've done the basic exposure white balance.
Mm-hmm.
What comes next, if anything?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. I don't really go in and do like color adjustments. I'll do like basic curve adjustments, just because the way I do shoot, I don't really need to do that because like I said earlier, I like my images to have that kind of warm feeling to them. And the problem is if you go in and start doing that with like, so let's say we're going and using the curves, like red, green, blue, which if you're used Photoshop, you should be familiar with the red, green, blue channels in the curves. And, I mean, you can go in and start doing that, but then you start getting like, it's harder to get like good looking color. So I just allow my white balance and curves adjustment to give me that color, which I use for all my wedding look. I use basically the exact same curve, and then just adjust brightness and a little bit of like extra contrast if I need to. So like, and the way I do it, it kind of gives it that like, I know people hate Visco, or actually people love Visco, but I hate it. But it gives it the curve that I do gives it kind of like that like contrasty film look to it, but it's not like a preset. So,
So is it a trade secret, your magic curve, or
no, it's not. I mean,
can we see it?
No, absolutely not. I'm just going to tell you, and you have to just figure it out. No, and it's really simple. Because I like the like obviously really bright kind of look, and so I start from highlights and go to shadows. So I always use the curves for this. I don't use levels. I don't even know why I have levels on here. But yeah, for the curve, it's just you go into your highlight area. I leave the highlights and shadows markers where they are, and then just edit in between those. I know some people, if they like the whole crushed whites and stuff, they can just drop that down and then go in and do that, and it just looks terrible. For me, it looks terrible. Sorry if you do that. But yeah, so for me, I just go in. I usually boost the highlights just a little bit, and you can see that her hair is blowing out a little bit. But you can. I mean, personally, I don't mind that. My clients don't mind that, so I don't really worry about it too much. And I have plenty of other shots where her hair is not blown out, so that people can know what it looks like. Yeah, so I'll go in. I'll kind of mess with the highlights a little bit, just get them to like where I want them. That usually looks pretty good right there. And then obviously that looks a little too bright, and it's kind of flat. So I'll go in. I usually have 2 points down towards the lower end. One just kind of bring the midtones and shadows back down to where they were, and then another one to kind of really bring the shadows down, just give that really contrasty look. So I usually bring one down. You can like the grid really helps with like lining this stuff up.
Hmm.
So I usually go just like right on the other side, like see. I'm assuming they can see the grids in there.
Yep, yep, yeah, we can
Okay.
see that good. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, usually in this little square right here, I always go bottom left of that square, which brings those shadows back down because you can see. Uh, Come on. So obviously that's what it was. Bring them back down. It gives it like a really really clean kind of look to it. And I mean
Hmm.
you can stop there if you want to. But for me, I like that like the deeper shadows and stuff. So I'll create another point just on the other side of that, and then bring that down a little bit more. And then it gives it. I mean, that's a little bit too contrasty for this image, so I'll just bring that up a little bit, like right about there. And while you're doing that, it's also you can see the midtones, the curve on the midtone. It's moving as I do that, so it just really like complements the dark shadows and stuff. So and that's for like the basic curve. That's what I do, and it all obviously all depends on the image. So you got to kind of tweak it per image, or per section basically. So like when I was actually editing this wedding, I did the basic curve for like this section and then applied it over all of them. And
So
then
that's something you would do on a batch copy
correct.
apply. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'll go through and then on this, like once you have the white balance set and everything, I'll go through and do this and then um, do the batch edit basically of once I figure out the curve and like saturation, contrast, all that kind of stuff, I'll copy that and then copy it back and then paste it back over that section. So the white balance will stay the same and then everything else gets the same curve adjustments. So, but like so on this, like shadows might be a little bit dark. So you have the high dynamic range sliders right here, and so I'll just slide that up just a little bit. I never go too much on this, so it'll just be just a tiny bit just to bring those shadows back if I need to, and then like highlights if I really wanted to. I can drag it all the way up and get a little bit more detail. I did shoot it a little bit bright, so I mean her hair is blown out no matter what. So, but for me, I'm not really too concerned about that. So,
Can you just show, this was Juan who was asking, if you wanted to save a curve preset, can you just show the preset menu in the curve tool? Next one along, I think. Yeah,
uh,
you were nearly there. The one with three lines. One to
oh,
the
there it
left.
is.
There we
Okay.
go. Yeah.
I've never done that.
There you
Wow.
go.
All right, I'm learning something too. So yeah, apparently, you can save user presets.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you wanted that curve, it looks like you can just go here, save user preset, and then
Correct.
hit save.
Give it a name. Yep.
We'll call this wedding
Wedding
curve.
curve.
Hit
Ta-da.
enter. So I'm assuming I can go here.
Yep. To any other shot, and
Oh,
then
wedding
pick it
curve.
back up.
Wow,
Yep.
look
There
at
you
that.
go.
That's gonna speed it up too.
There
Perfect.
you
Now it's
go.
gonna be
Yeah.
faster. um, well, good to know.
And if
So
you wanted to apply that to every single image,
yeah,
you could select all and
hmm
use the copy and apply
yeah,
button in the tool itself. So if you
yeah,
just
and
wanted to throw
all the
that
way
curve
over
across.
over here.
Yeah, so go to left. So that one there, if you just
Oh,
shift click that, it'll instantly apply. So if you say apply now or just shift click it, then it will
ooh,
put that curve across to everything else. Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, so that's good for individual adjustments, like if you just wanted to throw a curve to everything else, just shift click the little
Yeah,
up and down arrow, and away you go. Yeah.
that works. Yeah, because I used to always just do. I mean, I use the shortcut for it, but the copy adjustments and then just paste the adjustments over that or over
Yep.
everything else. So I guess either way works. So
Yeah, I mean the benefit, like the way the right click and copy and apply is great for copy everything from one to another. But let's say you've gone through 1,000 wedding shots and you realize that you forgot to, I don't know, adjust the sharpening or noise reduction or put your special wedding curve on, then you
mhm.
can use that shift click apply and it will just change the curve and
Okay,
leave everything else. So even if you've got 1,000 shots with individual exposure adjustments, that little shift click trick will just affect the curve and nothing else. So
good to
it's
know.
kind of that little known feature, as we've just proved,
Yeah,
that is really fast for doing an individual tool like that without kind of screwing up all your other adjustments.
Yeah, yeah, because I used
Yeah.
to always just do because they like the shortcut, the keyboard shortcut to copy adjustments, like everything is the Control or Command, or I guess Command Option C instead of Control Shift C for Mac.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Correct. Yep.
yeah, you can go Command Shift or Control Shift C and then Control Shift V, which pastes everything over that. So
That's right. Exactly.
yeah, and that's usually what I would do. So, but now that I know that, I might start using that.
There you go. Yeah, it's pretty handy, I say, just for those single tool applies. And it's just not. It's probably not something you would stumble across accidentally. It's sort of the one thing you kind of have to be seen, and that was that.
Yeah, for some reason I thought that was like you click it and it like expanded the like that little window or something. I don't know. I never clicked it, so
now you know. Yeah,
I do. Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, tech question, which I think I can answer if you can't, Chris. When adjusting the Kelvin slider, why does the numeric value not match the result? Example, if you slide to the right to warm up, the numeric value increases, which represents the cooler temp on the Kelvin scale, because you're actually the value that you put there is the light temperature that it was shot at.
Yes.
Is basically what we're saying, which is why it does what it does, Les, not the other way around as you're expecting, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And I do a lot of like 3D design stuff, and like Kelvin's all backwards in that. So I get confused doing that because I'm so used to being like, oh, like 7,000 is warm, but it's really not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Gabrielle is asking, do you use clarity on your shots, maybe negative value at a time as well to soften? Nope.
I don't. Nope. I don't soften anything. I don't sharpen anything. I shoot everything on a Nikon D810, so everything is extremely sharp, and there's way too much detail as is. So especially, because you can do it, like if you wanted to do it a little bit, the one thing I have noticed with Capture One is if you do use clarity, it works so much better than Lightroom's does, because Lightroom's is just like, I don't know, it's bad. Because like you have like the classic, so classic is basically what Lightroom's is.
Pretty close to that, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think you can change Lightroom's clarity method, basically. I think it's just one and done. And it's like this, like you drop it all the way down, you get like that really like glowy, soft look, which people like. Personally, not a fan. But for this, you can set it to a bunch of different ones. And so if you drop the neutral down this, you can see that it doesn't really affect it as much. It looks a lot better than just going to classic, because classic just kind of like blurs everything.
Yeah, classic is a really old method from Capture One 6 in the early days of when clarity was a thing, and it's pretty brutal. Whereas what you're on now, natural, is funnily enough much more natural and just better for people and that kind of stuff.
And it does work, like it does work well. I mean, I just don't like how it adds that contrast to it. I prefer to have full control over it and not let a program decide. But then I did notice that I've never really used the structure thing, but when I have used it, it works almost better than the actual clarity slider. Because it's like a sharpening type thing, but I don't know, it's not really sharpening. I'm not quite sure what it does, but it does work well what it does.
It's like a edge finding algorithm, I guess. So anything that has fine detail, like hair, I guess, animal fur, textures like fabric textures, landscape textures, it helps to enhance that. So sometimes you have to be a bit wary on people's faces if you don't want them to be, over accentuated as such. But it can be great for, like flower detail, all that kind of thing. It's be brilliant for that.
Yeah, I have used it on ring shots. So if like a diamond is slightly out of focus, I'll bring up the structure just a tiny bit, and it does make it look a little bit better. But other than like something simple like that, I don't use it at all. but yeah, that was a long long answer to a short question.
Yeah, but it useful. I mean, clarity is a
Yeah.
good tool for enhancing contrast in a more
Mhm.
subtle way, or softening in a more
Right.
subtle way.
Yeah.
And often those two sliders sometimes are more suited with local adjustments
Hmm.
as well, if you
Yeah.
ever get into that as such.
Yeah. Which I don't really do local adjustments for weddings. I do it for like fashion stuff, but which I can show them this and that too if they
Mhm.
if you want. So um,
Well, I'd say for weddings, I guess it's useful for maybe the hero shots, but I think if
yeah,
you did a local adjustment on 1,000 images, you'd probably need to
you'd
charge
be
a
there
bit
for
more, I
a long
suppose.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just before we sort of carry on with adjustment stuff, there was just a good question here which I can't find. Oh, it was a while ago from Peter, I think. Just not so much to do with weddings, but just it's kind of a yes or no answer. Uh,
Mm.
I think it was Peter. He said he hasn't shot tethered to PC before. Do you find that just as reliable as shooting with Mac?
Oh
If
yeah.
you've ever shot with Mac, yeah. I
Yep.
mean, it should be a
Yeah,
no-brainer
it should
now.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be exactly the same. It more comes down to the cable you're using.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm on Nikon, and it's like a USB 3.0 cable, and it's always had issues. So you have to buy like a special cable that allows the camera to get enough power from it to, I don't
Yeah.
know, it's weird. I had to go out and buy a special like booster cable. Not from I'm not going to say the brand because I'm not endorsing them because I don't like them, or at least I
Okay.
don't like their cables. But I went out and bought a off-brand one that works exactly the same for like $40 less. So
I think as long as you don't go and buy like the cheapest, shortest cable
mhm.
you can find, then just think about spending a bit more money on a better quality cable as
Yeah,
such. And the biggest pitfall people tend to do is buy some enormous 10-meter long cable, which is way beyond USB specs, and then it's
yeah.
not going to be great. But
Well, I
really,
think
tethering cameras now should be a no-brainer.
yeah, and I think
Yeah,
USB 3.0's max is like 7 feet or something like that before it needs a boost. So
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
but
Okay, adjustment question.
yeah.
John was asking, maybe this links to local adjustments. Would it be possible in Capture One to darken the steps in order to increase the difference between the steps and her dress? I assume John
Oh
means
yeah,
the shot we're looking at now. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. This is
yeah,
the only one that has steps, so I'm assuming so.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very easy to do actually. So when I'm doing when I'm doing local adjustment stuff, I do use my tablet for that because it's more
Yes,
accurate. So
yes.
if you don't have one, I'd recommend getting one. Um, but yeah, so for that, you have this little paintbrush right here, which is your local adjustments. And so you have the next part is you have like different layers to do this on. And each layer you can have it affect something different. So for this one, so basically we'll go in and we'll darken those stairs down. So you have this little plus button right here. You click that, it makes a new layer. We'll just call this stairs. And then once you have that, you can go in and I'm not sure like how far down I need it. So I'll just set it to a little bit lower value just so I know what I'm doing. Um, and then just make sure you have your draw mask button up here. Hotkey is B as in
Correct.
boy. And then with this, you can change. It's just like Photoshop for this. You can change your brush size with your bracket keys, and then you can right click, and then you have all your different brush settings. So flow, opacity, hardness, size, all that kind of stuff. I always go with a low hardness brush and then flow really low, just so I'm not overdoing it.
Yeah,
Um,
good
and
technique.
then, yep. And then, so once you make that mark, you have that, and then you can just start going in. And then I believe it automatically draws the mask in. So anywhere that's red is going to be that
Correct. Yeah.
where the mask is. Yeah. And so I'll just go in, do this real quick. Obviously, if I'm actually doing this for the client, I'd be much more precise, but I'm just doing this real quick for the sake of time.
And I think also with local adjustments, sometimes if you're too accurate, it can look a bit fake. So having that nice
Exactly.
soft
Yeah.
brush is a bonus. And also the
Yeah.
low flow, which if you don't know what flow means, basically means that the mask will build up gradually. So as you move the brush back and forth, each pass of the brush lays down more mask. So a low flow, it will take lots and lots of brush marks to bring the mask up. If you had a high flow, then you do your full adjustment in one hit. So
Right.
there we go.
And yeah, I definitely prefer having the low flow so you can get more
Yes.
accurate. But yeah, so I mean, just like that, the stairs are darker. I mean, that might be a little bit too dark, but now you can go in and change this. And it's not limited to just that exposure slider. I can go in, I can completely desaturate the stairs if for some reason I wanted to. I don't know why you do that, or if you wanted to bring a little bit more color into that, you can do that. And then it's the same thing with like all of this. You can go in and the mask will like still only affect that. So you can go in and don't know why you'd want to do this, but green stairs, there you go. But it shows you that you can still use anything in your like anything that you can use with like normally you can do it within an adjustment layer as well. And I know that Lightroom is, I think that Lightroom is pretty limited on that. I don't think you can go in and do everything.
Well, I think the main difference with Lightroom and Capture One for local adjustments is that Capture One presents it in a layer-like structure, more similar to Photoshop, where you can name layers, turn them on and off, and have multiple adjustments on that one layer. Whereas Lightroom, you're kind of creating an adjustment brush, so it's sort of, you end up with similar sort of potential possibilities, but the way we present it is much more familiar if you're used to Photoshop, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just easier to visualize, basically.
Yeah, and then another thing too is cool. So instead of having to like sit here and like switch back and forth, like, oh, this is what it looks like. Do I want it this dark? Whatever. You have this little like back arrow looking thing right here, and so if you just click that, it would reset everything to how it was. But if you hold down Alt or Option, is it on Mac?
Yeah, Option on Mac, Alt on PC. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you hold down Option or Alt and click on that and like hold down, and then it shows you what it originally was. Oh, geez, hold on, let me. Oh, whoops, I'm doing that on the white balance. Whoops. So yeah, hold on. I was like, why isn't that working? So yeah, if you hold down Alt or Option, click that, it brings it back to where it was, and then you let go, and then so you can do a quick toggle between them, so you can see the before and after, basically. Which I use that a lot in the fashion stuff, not so much the weddings. Just going back and forth, making sure like things look how they should. But yeah, so I mean, doing that is really, really helpful. So you don't have to sit there and like slide things back and forth to do that. And I think I should do the same. It's like if we here, let's try something real quick. I believe it will do it. So we'll just, I don't know. We'll make, just for fun. God, that looks terrible. So I think, yeah, so if you can do it up here on the local adjustments, and it'll do all of your adjustments at once.
Yeah, correct.
So that way you can see the full before and after. So we're going to turn that off because that looks really bad. But yeah.
But in answer to John's question, yes, you can darken the steps, yeah. Local adjustments, it's a super powerful feature, and I think if you want to know more about that, then there's plenty of stuff which I'll send in the follow-up email about other tutorials you can watch, and one of them being on local adjustments. So, but it's a great part of Capture One, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Before we run out of time, we saw it briefly, but I think another good thing, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, because I might be talking nonsense, is the process recipe aspect of churning out your outputs as well. And I noticed you had a couple of custom ones in there, I think.
Actually, I think these are all the defaults.
Using the defaults, and it is actually, that's the default set, correct.
Yeah, so if I'm going to go into Photoshop, I use the process recipes, just because you can select it, you can set how you want it to go into Photoshop or whatever, and then you can set it obviously to open Photoshop. So I use that if I'm going into Photoshop. And then if you do like metadata, all that kind of stuff, you can go in here. I don't ever worry about any of this. If you have a watermark, you can set your watermarks and whatnot, but I don't put watermarks on anything. Um, so what I do for like my actual export, so go through, finish everything, go back, double check, make sure everything's good. I'll go in, I'll just select all of my images and right click on them and go there's an export right here. And then I go export variants. And what that should do, hopefully it'll come up. My computer's been acting a little weird lately, so wow. Okay, what just happened? Hold on, I'm gonna.
There we go.
Variants? There we go. Okay. I don't know what that was. So basically, what you can do is now it's just like exporting from basically any other program. You can go in, choose what folder you want it to export as. We'll go desktop, new folder. Webinar. I think I spelled that right.
Close enough.
Yeah. And you can set your subfolders. So if you want to obviously have like all your reception in one, whatever, you can do that. And then you go down here, you have your format. I do JPEG, quality 100, and then you can set your resolution, scale, all that kind of stuff. And then when you're ready, you just hit export, and the window is over here. And I mean, that's it.
Yep,
so,
simple.
Yep, super fast, super easy. So.
And I'd say if just for the process recipe side of things, if people do want to do watermarks, then you can make a process recipe with a watermark. So if you're sending out, if you're one of these people who send out, proofs to the client as well, you can set up a proofing recipe which has your logo straight through the middle of it or whatever, so it can't be copied.
There we go.
There we go. There we go. So that could be a proofing recipe, and then you could use that for creating proofs and limit the size of the shot as well, of course. And then you could have your process recipe, which was your full 16-bit TIFF or full-size JPEG or whatever, and so on. And those recipes you can run multiple simultaneously. So if you want to do your full-size proof and all of that at the same time, then that's super speedy. Faster than Lightroom, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I know for at least like fashion stuff, like a lot of clients, they need like multiple like formats or whatever. So they'll need like the TIFF, they'll need the JPEG, or like something else. And yeah, you can export all of those at the same time. So it works really, really well. So, yeah.
Excellent. Last few questions, and then our hour's nearly up, which is amazing how quick it goes. Roman was asking, do you use the three-way color balance tool much for your wedding shots?
I do not. Nope. Like I said in the beginning, I really only use curves. Depending on so this shot right here, it's a little bit yellow. Like I like the white balance of everything else. Something you could go in, and this is where like maybe a local adjustment might help. But even still, I would probably change this with white balance instead, just because it's a more natural look. So I can go in and let me grab the brush size is way too big. So say his face is a little bit orange. So we'll go in, do that, and then just drop the white balance down a little bit to kind of correct for that. And like I said, you can do that with the the three-tone or the three-wheel thing, but I just don't. So it's too much time sitting there like moving that just in the right spot. I'd rather just drag a white balance slider down and have it good.
Gotcha. So just interestingly, often what I hear for sort of wedding photography is that it requires a lot of stylized sort of filtering and adjustments and presets on all the images, but it doesn't sound like you feel that's necessary to win the clients as such.
Not at all, no. And like, depending on what you how you do it, you'll get the clients that like that.
Yes.
And for me, I personally I don't want those clients. I want the ones that just they love raw. I mean, not necessarily raw, but just the really natural. This is what it actually looked like type thing. Yes. Not all these those, because certain presets will make the trees look brown. It's the trees weren't brown. So they're green, and I want to represent exactly how that day was. And weddings are usually bright, warm, full of happiness, all that kind of stuff. I want to represent that, and I don't need to go in and do all these weird color adjustments to get that. It can just be white balance and a curve. So,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah.
Good. Good to know. Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, how are we doing for time? 2 minutes. So let's just finish off with, I think there's one from Harwell's question, which was about defaults already, because you said earlier that you don't play around with the sharpening too much. So you're happy with Capture One's defaults in that respect for the
Yep.
the DA10? Yep.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's way too much detail already. So, so yeah, it's especially when it comes to the fashion stuff, it's beyond enough. So, and then obviously with weddings, most of the wedding shots aren't going to be blown up. They're going to be viewed on a computer or something like that too.
Yep.
So if I mean obviously it's going to be blown up, I'd go in and make sure it's all like perfect and everything too. So, but yeah, defaults are amazing. So I've never had any issues with their complaints from clients. So
Great. Yeah. And I think like there was almost always a stigma attached to sort of defaults, but it's probably important to mention that the default isn't in Capture One isn't actually a default. It's camera and ISO specific. So
exactly.
the defaults for your DA10 is kind of tuned as a compromise between good sharpness but not being over sharp. But then if like we think of a totally different camera, like a lower resolution, I don't know, say mirrorless, 12 megapixel mirrorless, if you think of my old Panasonic GF1, which was nowhere near as sharp as a DA10, then the default sharpening reflects that because there's less data to sharpen in the first place.
Right.
And the same goes with noise reduction, that the noise reduction defaults are camera and ISO dependent. So it's not like we just lob the same or place the same settings on every single image. It's very much tuned, which gives you a better starting point. So,
Right.
so really, you guys shouldn't have to be optimizing sharpness and noise reduction. That's something we should have done for you,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one thing I noticed in Lightroom is like they'll have like there are specific things on there, but it's theirs. It's not camera. So you can go in and change it back to camera, which makes it look so much better, but that's an extra step you have to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, which is annoying.
Last question from Greg, as this image has come up. Good one to finish on. Is the heart shape of the bride's arms with flowers intentional?
Nope, I just told
yes.
Yes, it was. I totally meant to do that. I actually never noticed that. Good. I like that.
There we go. Well,
Yeah.
now you can. Yeah.
I'm going to do that more often now.
That brings us up to the end of our speedy hour, and I'd say hopefully this gives whoever's watching some information to dig further, because Capture One is a pretty deep application, as you know, Chris.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's well worth. You've got nothing to lose by downloading a trial, throwing some images at it, and just seeing what you can do.
Yeah. And then, oh, go ahead.
No, carry on.
Oh, I was just saying, the next part is the demo. It's the full demo too.
Yes.
It's like there's no limitations. Like you can just you use it. There's no watermarks over it when you export or anything like that. It's you use it to its full potential for 30 days. Yeah.
30 days. Yeah. And if you want a bit longer, then we have in terms of buying licenses, you can buy a license outright, so you own it forever and ever. But if you want, you can do a subscription. But I think I'm going to prove myself a liar in a minute, but I'm pretty sure we did a 3-month subscription. I'm just going to check online very quickly, because the 3-month subscription is a good way of, if you need longer than the trial, 3 months, yes we do. Phew.
Okay.
So you can do a 3-month subscription if you wish. If you just want that bit longer than 30 days, then that's a good way of, an economical way of extending your subscription as well.
And I mean, for me, it took me maybe 3 or 4 solid days to get familiar with it. So I mean, just like any program, you gotta learn where things are. But it took me 3 or 4 days to do that, and I was going full speed. So
Exactly. And as you've seen, you don't need to learn every nuance of Capture
No.
One.
And then,
You know, cut a bunch of images and do some basic adjustments. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
Great. Okay, Chris, I'm just going to steal your
go
screen
for it.
back. 1 second. See if I can do that. Make presenter.
Yep, there you go.
Right, there we go. Let's just bring up the slide I wanted. As I've got the captive audience here, hang on, show screen, and here we go. So this is really targeted at anyone who's watching who's not using Capture One as well, and also to people who are using maybe 9 and 10. So really, next webinar, March the 2nd, is I'm going to talk about what's the benefit to upgrading, whether you're coming from Lightroom, Aperture, or something else, or Capture One 7, 8, 9, and 10, to show what Capture One 10 does differently to those earlier applications, and some of the stuff we've spoken about today as well, Chris. And some of the examples are put up on screen, like the color balance tool, color editor tool, and so on and so forth. So if you're not in the Capture One camp yet, that's a good one to join. And that's what I'll be discussing. And hopefully, Chris, I think I've got your contact details, but maybe you can send me the different ways to follow you: website, Instagram, Facebook, Google Plus, all that kind of stuff, or whatever else, carrier pigeon and so on. And then I'll put that in the follow-up email too, so people can follow you if they wish. So the follow-up email will come out probably about 24 hours time, and that will have a link to the recording as well, and ways to follow Chris, and other ways to learn Capture One as well, tutorials and that sort of stuff. So there we go.
Cool.
Thanks to Chris, and thanks to everyone listening. Hope you filled your hour with at least some useful stuff. So
Yep.
All right, Chris, and talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, take care, Chris. See you soon.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.